Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. It's Wednesday, which means we're going to be looking at all the news that we thought was really interesting from the last 7 days. So, just a couple of things that I know we're going to be talking about. Google's working with Gemini robots. We got Sam Altman saying that they're running into capacity delays. Tinder is saying they're building AI powered games to help people with flirting. That's interesting. Google's working with new stuff with 2.5 that we want to talk about. Amazon is getting deep into the AI movement with something called Nova and a suite of different things, including Nova Act, which we'll talk about. Google Slides has got some cool things going on. Back to Sam saying about, getting 1 million viewers that are users in the last hour, which is super cool. And oh man, we got a lot more. We got stuff about Meta glasses and a whole bunch of stuff. So hang with us today as we dive into those. And those won't even be the same topics. Those are the ones just I have that I thought were interesting and we'll dive deeper into. But of course, we have everybody else on the show. So today is April 2nd, 2025. And this is the Daily AI Show. And with me today are Beth, Jimmy, Andy, and I'm Brian. Thanks to everybody in the chat already. I see that we already have 24 chats in there, so I'll have to do some catching up on that side of it. But yeah, while we're talking about the chat, the welcomes and highs and saying hellos, but also, if you guys have a particular news story you think is worthy of being on the show today, put it in the chat. Let us know about it. Maybe something we're already getting to, but if not, we'll do our best to bring it into the conversation. So that's what we have going on today. And Jyunmi, in celebration of you being back in a location where you have solid internet, I'm throwing to you first because there's no delay. And I know you can jump right into it. So hit us with some of that sweet AI science and cool tech that you usually have for us.
AI and science.
That's right. Yeah, I know. We need the button or something.
I know. I need to get
Science,
that audio.
science, yeah.
Okay. So, all right. Let's talk about the Helmholtz Zentrum Dresden Rosendorf institution.
I'd like you to say that 3 times fast, please.
Right. It's the first time I ever seen it, and I was
holy
like,
cow,
"Wow,
way to start off a Wednesday show."
Well, apparently, what they've designed is a lighter, smarter, magnetoreceptive electronic skin, or an e-skin. All right. So we know that various sensors in robotics or embodied AI is one of the key goals in getting robots to interact with humans in their daily lives, right? You want the robot to be able to see everything that's going on, hear everything that's going on, be able to move around in their spaces. But one of the more difficult roadblocks has been touch. Right, having touch sensors so they know how to apply the right amount of pressure when moving things and stuff like that. So right now, those touch sensors are the technology is it's a bulky, thick substrate that's added to whatever the contact points are, and they're not very effective. But it's the worst that it'll ever be, kind of thing. But these folks, because I'm not going to try and say their name again, they they have come up with an e-skin. It's a much more flexible and light layer, like another layer of skin that has all of those touch sensors on there. And so it precisely tracks the magnetic fields in a single global sensor. So it's a single sensor, and it can track all the magnetic fields around an area and how it interacts with objects and things like that. So this is one step closer for finer movement and handling in embodied AI. And I think that's going to be a big thing. And with this sensor, it could also be, and this is me supposition, but when you have the sensor that can affect those fields and read out what those kinds of touch levels are, that equate what human touch can sense, then you could do the reverse. You could this is where you could start getting your more evolved haptic systems and things like that, so that you can react with your virtual reality in those various forms beyond just sight and sound. So yeah, exciting stuff.
In the comments, Jude, Jeff, Greg, got the names right, Gareth in there, all sort of like jumping on and saying like, hey, not just Eskin, the walls of your house, your bed sheets, your lazy boy, which is not where I would have gone with that story. But I love that they did, because I was like, well, yeah, if it's a really thin layer of, you know, sensitive feedback, whatever it is, it also kind of makes me feel like Avatar. Maybe that's something you could bring up on the Sci-Fi AI show on Friday. But it has that feeling of like that everything is a connected sort of feel to it, you know. But that's really interesting and not where I would have thought. But like, yeah, Eskin in other multisensory environments, not just necessarily on a robot. But a pivot for robots really quick is one of the ones I mentioned about Gemini robots, because Gemini, Google, in the game in all areas. And what they announced was that they've got now a new family of Gemini 2.0 models designed specifically for robots. It's head of the Google DeepMind said there. Carolina, sorry, I'm reading this in reverse order. I apologize. Carolina Parada, who is, I think, head of robotics at DeepMind, is talking about Gemini 2.0 models designed specific for robots. And they were saying, one of the things Carolina was saying in this article, and there's some videos of it, about how we've heard these stories before, that it gets to the dexterity. And so they're really trying to help these robots with the dexterity, because we don't necessarily think it unless we're a baby and we're trying to learn how to walk and grab things. And if you ever, you know, Andy's grandson, you know, like the fun of watching a little kid try to place something down where it's supposed to go obviously takes a lot of work. For anybody that we've ever seen have to do rehab and perhaps lose the ability to walk and have to relearn to do that as an adult, it always looks so daunting. And so of course it's no surprise then to get robots to work in a human world. That's a daunting task. And so what they're showing in this video is how that 2.0 plus some other models that they're working on specifically for robotics are now enabling it to do things like, in this case, it says pick up a basketball and slam dunk it. Now it's a teeny tiny toy little basketball. It's not like slam dunking, which would be cool, but it's just a little one. But her point in the article real quick is just to say it doesn't know anything of basketball. It hasn't been taught on this before. There's no pre-training here. It thought about it, you know, one side of the model, and then whether that was the Gemini or the dexterity side of things, and then figured out how to pick up this little ball, pick it up, and put it through the toy basketball hoop. And she was saying how exciting that was for her to see that done on the first try. It did it immediately. It got it. It solved it immediately, and how much of a leap this is. So just wanted to bring that up. We'll talk about Gemini again, I'm sure, on today's show for some other things they have going on with 2.5. But, you know, just again, we're going to be doing a show here soon on all the stuff with Google. But it's almost like if we wait another day, then there's 5 more things to talk about with Google. So it's almost like you almost always inevitably know whatever our Gemini or Google show is going to be, we'll miss something because it'll come out the next day again. But anyway, I thought that was super cool. So I just wanted to pivot off of your sort of robot story there with another one. Let's see, Beth, what do you got? Yes, I got you.
Okay.
The
So
chat, I get it. Sorry, Beth.
it's yeah, no, it's a
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
I can't
it's a
type.
lot.
Okay. So Dartmouth did a clinical research study for a Therabot, an AI chatbot for mental health. The stories that are reporting on this are like, oh, you know, this may be the future of mental health, and you know, it's as good as human, it's as good as human therapists. Um, the clinical trial demonstrated that users experience a 51% average reduction in depression symptoms and a 31% decrease in generalized anxiety. And actually, really interesting, participants at risk of eating disorders reported a 19% reduction in harmful thoughts related to body image and weight issues after interacting with Therabot. And it suggests that AI-driven therapy provided by Therabot can be as effective as sessions with human therapists. So what I see in this is an amazing support, right, for people who need more than just a once a week or that kind of intervention, or people who are in an area where that isn't an option, this is actually a really great idea. And usually the treatment for eating disorders for someone who's really at like a critical place is in person, because you need that kind of constant reinforcement, right? So like the 19% reduction in eating disorders looks like, wow, right?
Yeah.
This could be a really major shift. Yeah, so that was exciting.
I think that's amazing. And one thing you didn't mention too is just cost prohibitive, like it's not all covered by insurance. I know that personally from my family experiences. Like it's, good help costs money, and it's out there, but there's also a cost associated with it, and that can be, it's not that people don't want help. I don't think, right? It's just that like it just may not be financially something they can perhaps do. Not to say there's not great resources out there, but this is perhaps a way to get people, to your point, more consistent help. That's not a replacement for the human therapy, but an adjunct or something to it.
Right. I think the danger in this is that people will say, "Oh, it's just as good. We don't need to cover that."
Right.
Right? Like, no, mental health should be like very, very covered.
Yeah.
Um,
Anybody that's been
and
watching that show Adolescence right now, as I am, would agree. Don't ruin it for me. I'm only 3 episodes in. I have 1 more to go. My daughter's seen it. She's like, "Will you watch the end of that show so we can talk about it?" But yes, if you've watched Adolescence on Netflix, you probably would agree with that statement. So.
they also mentioned that
the-
it's potentially a place where people who don't seek mental health assistance because of a stigma thing may be more willing to engage in something like this. And like, hey, talk to the chatbot if you're thinking dangerous thoughts about yourself or anyone else, right? Like, this seems like an excellent idea in that context. So
On that Dartmouth study, I thought it was interesting that the participants who were in that trial had only about 8 hours of conversation with the Therabot. But in that simple 8-hour experience, most reported a positive emotional attachment to Therabot. They really appreciated and connected with Therabot. So there's some evidence there that this could be a replacement for live human therapists, because, I think you should also have choice. Now, I want to pivot on the science and medical thing to something that was really amazing to me. So the Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science at Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley, along with researchers at the University of California, San Francisco, have made it possible now to think what you want to say and have a speech generator say it fluently. And so this was used in the case of a woman who had her speech eliminated by injury. But she was, lucid and could think and everything, but she couldn't speak anymore. So what they did was, we've heard about Neuralink, and you've seen the demonstrations long ago of how Elon Musk company Neuralink had done an implant, which allowed the person to kind of very painfully kind of move a cursor on a screen by thinking about moving it. Well, that's a far cry from what was accomplished and announced now. And what it is, they implanted a high density interface to the verbal cortex in this participant. This is the single participant in this demonstration, and that turned her neural signals, using a deep neural network, turned her neural signals directly into her natural sounding voice, because they had recordings of her voice from before, at 90 plus words per minute, with only a 1-second delay. Now, this is really important because when people have a speech impediment as a result of an injury, that can create isolation and feelings of loneliness, because people don't want to have to work through a really slow interface and it's difficult to maintain a continuous conversation. Well, this blows all that away. So fluent speech synthesis from an implant, personalized to the person's pre-injury voice, and decoding in 80 millisecond increments. This is the promise of AI in medicine.
I love that. You know, it reminds me of my friend Mandy. Years ago, well, she still deals with Lyme disease, as many people do, and it's still, I think, very much misunderstood, and there's still a lot of people trying to help with people who have Lyme disease. In Mandy's case, for a period of time, she could not speak fast, quickly. I don't know how else to say that. And we would get on phone calls, and Andy, it kind of makes me think back to this of how hard it was for me not to slow down my speech. Mandy had no problem understanding me. Mandy could not speak fast back to me at a normal pace, what we would consider a normal human pace back to me. But it messes with you, right? Because like you're thinking like, oh, I need to break this down. No, Mandy understood me fine. So I wonder if
you were mirroring
yes,
her behavior. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Without wanting to, obviously. Like I felt myself actively fighting against that.
It's actually an important social skill. You want to match the other person's cadence and so on. But you're right. It would have been much better for her,
right? Yeah,
not to mirror.
If anything, it's not like she knew I wasn't, but anything it can come across the wrong way. Obviously, like I was didn't believe she had the ability to comprehend faster, right? And that wasn't the case because we'd known each other for years before that. Anyway, and then the other thing I was going to say is I don't know anything about comas and stuff like that, but what you're saying, Andy, I do wonder if that has any implications in the future of healthcare for people in comas who are what would be the term, lucid? I mean, there's people who wake up from comas and say, I remember every conversation. I was there for all of it. I literally couldn't do anything about it, but my brain was active. And I almost wonder if there's some maybe future connection of what you just said to people who are effectively in comas but awake, whatever that term is. And I'm sorry, I really don't know what the medical term is for that. But the people who wake up and say, oh, I remember you being in the room. There's nothing I could do about it. I couldn't react in any way. But I was aware you were there and I heard you when you were talking to me. So I don't know.
This technology would require that there be measurable brain activity.
Okay.
So
and specifically in the motor cortex. That's where this study is pulling it from. But there are other, like, that's sort of what's unique about this. I mean, there are lots of things that are unique about this, but the fact that it was part of the motor cortex as opposed to some of the other studies that have pulled the intent of speech from other places.
Yeah. So in effect, the interface is intercepting the commands from the brain for a person who had previously been able to speak to the vocal cords, which are now damaged. Instead, now the computer is voicing that.
It's really interesting, man. I tell you what, those are the stories that just give you hope. You know, you hear about all the good and potential of AI, and then you hear like something about that enabling people who are, otherwise aren't able to speak in their own voice, like you were saying, because they had trained it on their own voice. I have a quick one that's a pivot from Therabot and definitely more lighthearted, maybe less scary, was the news I saw from Tinder announcing that they had used, OpenAI models to help with an AI bot to help with practicing flirting, reenact meet cute scenarios. Now, I don't know. This has nothing to do with age. This has more to do with me being married 19 years, and I don't know what reenact meet cute scenarios even means. But assuming that you're on Tinder and you've used those, services like that, I don't know how I feel about that. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Do I really want an AI bot helping practicing with flirting? Is that I don't know. There's a whole lot of I don't know in this one, but I guess ultimately if it helps people feel more confident, or ultimately I guess the whole point is to meet somebody on these, not just Tinder, but these other dating type apps, that I guess I'm for it. I mean, it's kind of like Therabot. There's good reasons maybe why AI can help with this, but I don't know. It's the whole idea about practicing flirting. I don't know.
and to address the fact that this could be really, really bad, I believe you're only allowed 3 flirting sessions daily. So but that feels like Doesn't that feel like giving someone an addictive substance, but limiting it? Like
Yeah.
that's not, that just means you obsess about it for the rest of the day until you can get back to it the next day. Like, I'm not sure that's going to have the ultimate protection that you're thinking.
And I almost wonder if it's just going to have like the wrong effect ultimately. Because what if you get good at flirting with the AI bot and it does not translate for you in the real world? You know, guy, girl, whatever the situation is, whoever you're attracted to, whatever your deal is, and then you go on that first date and like the things that you've practiced just aren't hitting. They're not landing. And you're like, but I practiced. The AI bot said I
Right.
was good at this. You know, like why am I not getting the response I was hoping to get? You know, so I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm not against it. I'm cautiously optimistic about this, but just like the Therabot, to dismiss it and say that AI could not be really helpful in this type of scenario would be a mistake by me. So I definitely hope it helps. That'd be great, you know.
But this is back to
Also,
that Simpsons episode, right? Like I prefer, wasn't it Simpsons? I prefer the robot girlfriend to the regular girlfriend.
Futurama.
Futurama, thank
Mm.
you.
So I am already imagining what the train of thought for Tinder is. So yes, here's a nice little coach bot, right, to help you coaching. And you're right, Brian. What if that's not going to work in the right situation? So CoachBot goes to personalized CoachBot. Oh, I matched with this person. Okay, well, let's prep for our first meeting. And there's a profile built upon the person that you've matched with.
I mean, it's kind of what we do in sales. I'm not going to lie.
That's what I'm saying. That's right. And we talked about this months ago when the Bumble CEO was talking about this. You know, it's like, well, when is it going to be their coach bot working with our coach bot? And then we figure out, okay, this is going to be the ideal situation. They come back, they prep us for an ideal meeting. Now, did we actually really meet, or was it all the work of the AI? But
like,
you know,
that doesn't sound bad until like some product gets in the middle of it, right? Because now we've got both of you together, but the reason that you're together is due to this brand product, blah blah blah. And now
like they suggest you should go to this restaurant for your first date. You should go watch this movie for your first date. You should order this bottle of wine for your first date. You know what would be a really good anniversary gift? You should do this. And then of course, you know, it builds upon.
I mean, look, you kind of blew my mind there for a second, Jimmy, because you're absolutely right in the sense that really good outbound email sequences are professional flirting. It's somebody coming in and not knowing not just to say that like, I see you went to UGA, and like that's like bad flirting, right? That's bad professional flirting. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Weirdo. You saw it on my thing, but like I had somebody one time and she's like, look, here's the deal. She's just how her email started to me. I forget what she was trying to sell, but it caught my eye because she's like, here's the deal. Georgia plays Tennessee this weekend. This is what I say. If Georgia wins, you don't have to have a meeting. If Tennessee wins, you have to send it. And it was just so different. And I was like, she was talking about the game. She knew I was into the football, whatever. And I was just like, I mean, she kind of gets me, professionally, she kind of gets me. And I said, whatever she was trying to sell was not a fit. And I was like, look, but I responded to her. And I was like, look, I appreciate this email. This outreach email was stellar. You nailed it in terms of flirting. So you're kind of right, man. It's like, it really is the same thing. It's just focused a different way, So yeah, good call out on that one for sure. All right. What else we got? I have a few more, but I mean, whatever. What do you guys have?
More AI and science. Okay.
Go for it.
Cool. All right. Well, let's weave on to an interesting study about how so University of California, San Diego, talking a lot about of UC for a while, but UC San Diego came out with a study that they published in Scientific Reports between researchers from LMU Munich and Waseda University in Tokyo. They found that people are far more likely to take advantage of cooperative AI agents than similarly cooperative fellow humans in Japan. So essentially, this article is about there being a philosophy or cultural difference of exploitation of artificial agents in Japan. And the reason they did this study is because it could apply to things like decision making by AI, right? And how it would be different culturally, right? So AI functioning in Japan would function different than necessarily in the United States or in California, a particular area. And so, so they determined that in Japan there's far more respectful interaction with artificial agents and robots and things like that. And it's not surprising to me, as me being, since I'm a little more familiar with Japanese culture and history, and of course coming in from the sci-fi and side of things and those kinds of angles. But I think it highlights, much like how we could have a relationship with a coach bot or a therabot or something like that, where these kinds of cues or these cultural touchstones need to be addressed for whomever is using the AI or building or training the AI. So you might need to invoke a different training set or of your mixture of AI experts in whatever field to more personalize for the person using it. Where are they from? Those kinds of things. And so I thought that was an interesting highlight of, culturally speaking, these different this different evolution is going to inform how we train AI to better interact with us. So an interesting study from the folks. Now, if the question is, why do you think Japan is has that more respectful connection? I think that really comes from an analysis of just the overall culture, the politeness and process of communication and things on those levels, but also historically, like the strong influence of the Shinto religion and the concept of the 8 million gods and all those kinds of things. There is a history of anthropomorphizing or seeing how what's the best word to use? Significant inanimate objects would have its own anima, right? How they treat, like, say, good examples like Mount Fuji. They reference Mount Fuji as Fujisan, right? Because Mount Fuji is an imposing, it has that anima that they all recognize. It's like, oh no, that is a spiritual being. So you need to be respectful when communicating, those kinds of things. So I found it fascinating. I think the touchstone for the AI side is the key takeaway is that we need to pay attention to the cultural development side of the any AI that we're training, and not just keep it from a single monocultural kind of aspect of how we're training or communicating and implementing.
I really enjoyed that discussion of animism as an element of Japanese culture, and partly because I spent 5 years living in Japan when I was in high school age range. And so I feel that deep in my spirit, there's a presence of the Japanese culture that has sustained me through the balance of my life, and is in sharp juxtaposition against the kind of the cultural characteristics of the more independent, me first, America first kind of mentality that I experience here. I wanted to dive a little deeper into the incredible growth of ChatGPT. So you mentioned it, but let's just put some additional statistics on that. So as you know, we've often shown graphics or discussed just how far ahead of the field in terms of user base and also revenue, ChatGPT is ahead of all the other players. So in the past 3 months, their monthly revenue has grown 30%, largely driven by the launch of 4.0 and its image generating capabilities, which led to this 1 million signups in an hour. But a lot of those people were paying for that. And they also cite in their revenue commentary that the $200 a month one is contributing significantly to their revenue growth. Now, in terms of user base, their user base grew even faster than revenue, faster than 30% in 3 months. And now they're approaching 500 million weekly users. And let's just think about how that compares to the other players. Now, these aren't going to be directly comparable because that's weekly users. And these others that I'm going to mention are in daily users. So their weekly users are probably a bit higher, but just the order of magnitude difference is telling. So Gemini is up to 11 million average daily users compared to 500 million weekly users on ChatGPT. DeepSeek has 16 million, so they're ahead of Gemini, and that's 16 million daily users. And Claude has 3.3 million daily users. Now, remember, when we compare these user numbers, this doesn't include the API access. So if Anthropic Claude is actually being accessed more significantly by API users than by people using Claude as a chatbot or using Claude application on their desktop, then it could be that Claude's much closer to Gemini and or DeepSeek than we can see, because many people are using that, including almost all of the coding agents, right? All of this conversation that's happening with vibe coding, most of that is accruing to the benefit of daily use of Claude 3.7 Sonnet. So, but as we've told in the news and we'll talk about further, Gemini 2.5 Pro is going to start eating away at that share because of its incredible competence in coding. So one last point, and tying this to the question of, have we reached a flat line in terms of investment in chips? Is NVIDIA going to stall and drop off the map? Well, Sam Altman said in the face of these incredible growth numbers that their chips are melting, right? And they're having to throttle utilization of their servers, and they're having trouble finding enough chips to be able to run the inference necessary to serve that larger and growing community. So I think this bodes very well for NVIDIA and all the other chip manufacturers. Inference compute, not pre-training compute, but inference compute, where people are actually using the models, is going to drive chips from NVIDIA and others, for the foreseeable future, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think those are both important stats. Really, you talked about the 1 million and the, 1 million in the last week.
In 1 hour. No, in 1 hour. After the launch, they got 1 million subscribers in an hour.
And that was compared to, Doc, I had it up in front of me. Okay, this is what it said. Okay, this is Sam's post. The ChatGPT launch 26 months ago was one of the craziest viral moments I'd ever seen. And we added 1 million users in 5 days. We added 1 million users in the last hour. That was his thing. I just want to make sure I got it right. So, but that was on what you were saying, Andy, on that post, which is, I think you're right. Like there's, and there was another, I saw it, I didn't pull up the news article, but they just got raised another investment round led by, I think, SoftBank or something like that for billions more.
40 billion raised for OpenAI at a $300 billion valuation. Now, to put that into context, 300 billion is 1/10 of the 3 trillion that NVIDIA reached at its peak, right? and that Apple has touched and so on. So it's still a small company by comparison.
Isn't that amazing?
The ramp, the trajectory of their valuation is really solid. It's a rocket ship.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
And 30 billion of that was SoftBank. And I'm curious, is SoftBank's investment like cash versus Microsoft's investment was like it was significant, but it was existing servers, right? Like you got that value from
it was like credits to use the
right.
Well, they're one of the
how it
major
seems.
players with Stargate, right? When they talked about the Stargate announcement, it was Stargate, right? And it was SoftBank, OpenAI, and Goldman Sachs. Who was the third? Oracle. Oracle was the third major person in that. So it wasn't shocking for me to see SoftBank in there because I thought the same thing about that. I said, oh, I wonder how much of this is really just a part of the Stargate and the data centers and the, you know, are we hearing the story and it sounds separate, but it's really just part of the larger thing? And it's always hard to tell there when it comes to investment on there. I want to pivot really quick to
the other thing about
I'm
Sam's
sorry.
comments lately, when he said he came out and said, you know, you should expect our releases to slow down a little bit because of the amazing increase in usage we're getting. Also, if you have compute in, I think, 100,000 chunks, hit me up. I was like, that's, I mean, it just sounded like, wow, okay. Yes, I mean, that sounds like a one way to source what you need, but also like, wow, we're seeing into the window of like literally how much they're sort of racing at the edge of their abilities in terms of mechanics, right?
And you can feel it too, right? I mean, we've talked about this either on the show or off the show, but we definitely talked about it. And I know I've said it to other people. Like ChatGPT is slower, not just image creation, is slower than any time I can remember, probably in the last year. I don't even want to go back a few months. I think it was faster a year ago with results. I often have to wait up to a minute to get a full response. We use it every day to take the transcript and turn it into the YouTube summaries that go out when we reformat it. So when the show goes out to Spotify, that's something that's done through ChatGPT and through like a custom prompt. And although it's accurate every single time, and I don't mind waiting for it, it's a once a day thing. And I certainly wouldn't want to do it by long form and do, you know, by myself. That up to a minute, maybe in that range for it to fully finish it. I mean, kind of back to the early days where it was doing the old DOS line by line thing, you know, and I think I've just gotten so used to the speed. But again, it kind of goes like the speed thing and the latency goes back to what's the value of what you're getting back. And that's actually probably a good pivot to, and I'm actually going to share this one on my screen, talking just about Gemini 2.5 Pro Experimental or 2.5 being generally available to the public. We're going to do it. Like I said, we've said this a couple of times now. We're going to do a whole show centered around Google and what they've been doing from robotics to Gemini to the whole, we'll cover the gamut of it, but specifically for 2.5, this is something we sort of uncovered yet last night when we were working on a different project. What I did was I just gave, so just real quick, I'm in Google AI Studio. I went over and picked the model Gemini 2.5 Pro Experimental 325 here. And then something we found out last night that, you know, we were saying is really, really impressive from the side of 2.5 is if you go to a plus thing here, you can add in a YouTube video. I put in yesterday's show into that. And you can see here, if you're looking at the screen, but I'll tell you what it says. It says, can you tell me where the host discussed the idea of multimodal RAG and how it related to the overall conversation? So I was pretty thoughtful about that comment or that question because I didn't want it to just pinpoint to one time. I wanted it to not only pinpoint when multimodal RAG was brought up yesterday, but then relate it back to a larger concept. And if you look down here, it's like, okay, let's pinpoint it. What I find interesting here is there's nothing else given here other than our initial YouTube URL. And probably because of the data that's put in for the host, I'm guessing, Beth. I don't know if you can answer this or not, or why this would be right, because I didn't have your improved transcript. I only had the URL. but in the YouTube description of that show, it does have all our names spelled correctly. And first things first, I was really like thrown off by how quickly it did that. But if you
Well,
look
wait,
here, it says,
Brian, it's looking at the video, and on our feed, the
oh, that's
video
right.
shows our name. So it
Well,
just read your name.
Yeah,
It's
you're
in
right.
the
It is on there.
it's in the description. It's in the description of the live stream.
But this isn't the live stream. This is the redone. This is the reproduced video.
Okay.
So it's not, it's the other video is what I'm saying. It's not the live video, but yes.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, it comes in. Well, all I wanted to say in here is like for people to go try out Gemini 2.5. That's really what this is like it's free to use. Like you can go do exactly what I just did on here, I believe. Although I wonder if you can upload. Somebody told me that that was only for a pro. I paid for Gemini a while back, and I do kind of remember that it went through like April. So it's perhaps you wouldn't be able to do the upload, but regardless, well, that's not an upload. That's just giving it a URL. Anyway, it says Brian here, bottom right, starts to pivot from the basic token factory equals data center idea. And it talks about how I started talking about the multimodal side of data. Then it says Andy Halliday, bottom left, built on this while explaining tokenization and so and so. It has some bolded stuff here, like a part, and is a quote from Andy from yesterday, a part of an image to set of text elements. He further reinforces this by referencing Gary Marcus's alleged April Fool's is that alleged April Fool's post about GPT-5, which I appreciate because that was funny from yesterday. Then it says I talked about it again. Then Jyunmi came in. He was in the top right. He reinforced the value of the processing of all data types rather. He mentions LLMs and so on and so forth. So I mean, look, this is really, really impressive. And it's something I think everybody should just kind of go mess with, even if you're not giving it YouTube videos or whatever. I highly recommend you going and checking out Google's Gemini 2.5 because, you know, it's right up there. And people say from a vibe standpoint, that's getting a lot of love from people saying, just like with 4.5, where Sam, and I mean, I would agree with this too. 4.5 has a different vibe to that's an overused word, but a different feel when you're interacting, maybe say more human. I'm not really sure how you want to say it, but generally just a little bit more fun. It's what we always have said we loved about Claude. Well, 2.5, and I would agree with this in the few times I've used it, not even just for this type of stuff. It is very easy to read and converse with. Like, I just feel it's got an easier flow to it. Call that what you will. I think everybody will have an opinion on it, but definitely worth checking out. You can see crucially how good it is. And in yesterday's example, not the same one we did, we also validated that 2.5, if you give it a YouTube video that has images throughout that video, despite the fact that those images were not specifically talked about. In one case, we had a video where it was just a sign that showed up for what, Beth? You'd say 3 seconds in that total video. It showed up 3 seconds, and it quoted the sign as a reference point in that video, despite it not being part of the transcript and only being on the screen for 3 seconds. It told us exactly what that sign said and how it related to the overall question we had in the prompt. That's pretty powerful. That's pretty powerful. I don't know that we've seen anything else that has that kind of level of intelligence when it comes to this.
Absolutely. So the YouTube search is part of AI Studio, so Google's back end. And you can get it, you can use it with Flash 2.0 and 2.5. Both of those have, like, if you click the plus button, you see what you can upload. You can give it a URL of a YouTube video. It is not available on the front end of the advanced Gemini, but 2.5 is available through advanced Gemini. It's just not the YouTube upload is not part of that. Yeah.
Gotcha. So you're saying you would have to go to Google AI Studio for that?
Yes, but the benefit of that is that it's free.
Yeah.
If you have advanced Gemini, you're paying for it in one way or another. But on the back end, AI Studio is free.
And don't forget, I mention this all the time. It is such a nice thing to be able to mess with temperature. Everybody's into that. That's fine. Again, temperature is a controller for creativity. But if you have not ever done that, if you never were one of those people that went over to the playground from the OpenAI side where you also would be able to deal with temperature, go play with that. So basically ask for results, just work with 2.5, get your results, then clear it out because you don't want that to be in the cache of the response. And then move your temperature from, like, it'll default at 1, move it down to like 0.75. clear it out, move it down to 0.5, then move it up to 1.2 or something in there, and just watch the differences in the answers. It really gives you an appreciation for this idea of predicting the next best word and how temperature or creativity affects that. So totally worth going to play with, because again, it's free, and why wouldn't you? It's there for you. Google wants you to go mess with it, so yeah, you should. So all right, that was my Google story. I don't think I have another one. I thought maybe I had. Oh yeah, I did one other one really quick, and I don't have on it because I haven't messed with it. Sorry, I'm finding it. Google Slides now uses Imagen 3 and adds other new visual tools. I got to tell you, I'm really excited about this. If I can go into Google Slides and have a little bit more help with the images, both for scaled and other things that I work on Google Slides with, I haven't played with it yet, but this is a big improvement. I felt like the AI has been lacking in the slides. I also think there's a huge win there for Google. I know other tools are doing this as well. Microsoft does with Bing and what they're doing with AI. So it's not revolutionary, but honestly, it seems like an easy frontier to cross, which is to say, hey, give me all the best of, image generation, but give it to me directly in Google Slides and allow it to have a really deep understanding of what I'm trying to accomplish just on the slide, and then give me really good quality images to go with it. So probably worth checking out. That just came out like 2 days ago. I don't know if it's for like Google Workspaces, for like businesses. So sometimes they roll out to one or the other. But yeah, go check it out and see if you have the Imagen 3 as part of that. What else you guys got? We got a few minutes here. Not too much, but yeah.
I just want to mention the story that we promoted in the description today, which is Musk's merger of X.com with X.ai. It did a couple things, like it brought back the valuation of X.com, but it was like he and his same advisors for both companies advised on the valuation. So there were a lot of there were a lot of responses like, I also sold my car to myself for $1 million,
Right,
because I agreed that it is worth $1 million in our and it's a personal agreement, right? It's a whatever, the fake paper that I sold it to myself on. But there is also some real parts here, in that um, X has the distribution network. It's estimated 650 million users, and it is continuing to integrate XAI with, as we've talked about before, you can click the Grok logo to get an analysis of a tweet that you'd like to know a little bit more about, or get to Grok through XAI. So I think we've all been assuming that XAI is kind of already a part of it, or X.com is already a part of XAI. But this did a couple things that sort of matter, I would say.
Yeah, the specific numbers, if you recall, he purchased Twitter, I think, for $54 billion. And
44. Yeah, I thought.
No. When he purchased Twitter,
Okay.
when Elon Musk purchased Twitter, it was over 50 billion, right? And now he sold it to himself for 44 billion. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was either 54 billion or 50. That was his. He had said, I'll pay 54 billion for it, and he ended up having to. The courts made him pay that.
Oh, that's right. That's
right.
I will tell you that just the quick Google response to this from ABC News says it is 44 billion in October of 2022. Acquired Twitter for roughly 44 billion is what it says.
Okay, so right, I thought he had declared 54. So this is my ancient brain not remembering it very well. But so by selling it to X.ai for 44 billion, he basically, in effect, paid himself back for the acquisition.
Yeah, and it included 12 billion of the debt. Like so it paid off 12 billion of the debt so that he netted 33 billion, or like whatever it was. But again, it's sort of self value in some ways, because it was it was valued, I think, at 10 billion in September. Like, it was not anywhere near those things from an external source. But since then, he has become more. I don't know how I'm going to describe this. He has more connections in the U.S. government, so maybe that connects and increases the value of his properties. I am done speaking about that.
Well, I just said we don't have a lot of time, but I just want to at least pull this up on the screen because we don't talk a ton about Amazon as it relates to AI. Yes, they have Alexa Plus coming out. Beth, I know you had maybe gotten the show, and there's some like limited release of that. But I also just wanted to bring up Amazon Nova, which you may not be familiar with, but you go to nova.amazon.com, you'll come right to this page. It talks about how you can try it. What the news actually was about recently was for Nova Act, which is a browser control. So it would be a competitor to Anthropic's computer use and OpenAI's Operator. So interesting and probably worth doing a show on Amazon alone because they're certainly in the AI space. They just haven't gotten a ton of news necessarily because they're not necessarily deploying things at the speed or whatever. But even if you just go to this Nova site, they're clearly active in this space. They're just not always getting top billing in the news, but probably worth just like a Google show, worth having an Amazon and like, what is Amazon doing? What is Nova? Where do they seem to be going? We've heard about the Alexa Pluses, things like that, but where are their intentions in moving with it, especially in the robotic space, the factories and things like that. Probably a really interesting story. So kind of a news story about a future show.
Yes. And like super excited. We're likely to do a Gemini show next Friday, right? Or a
Cool.
Google show, Google Labs, etc. All the cool things. But Google Labs and Google and Amazon have still, like, they don't have the assistant built into their cloud dev things, which is a fascinating choice. Like, it's still like, I can code Python like I knew it natively because of all of these assistants. I am looking for the assistants for these companies, and that is still not happening. And I think at some point that's an intentional choice, right? Like, no, you can't pretend to be a cloud certified dev. Like, you have to actually be a cloud certified dev. But yeah, so like maybe by the time we do the Amazon show, you'll have fixed AWS so it's easier to use. Just asking for a friend.
Any last news stories? I still have more on my screen, but I think we're just kind of like
I've got a quick one.
Yeah, go for it.
So correction, my last story was from a University of Munich. This one is about University of California, San Diego. And so UC San Diego has created a robot that can be 3D printed, powered by gas, as in like air, and they've designed it to where it can run autonomously for like 3 days straight, just with a supply of air, compressed air. And so what's amazing about this is, number one, it touches upon mass production. Number two, this is not made with any electronics whatsoever. Even its controlling actuators comes from a pneumatic circuit. So it's kind of amazing on that point. One of the applications they talk about is they're trying to design it to put into situations where electronics just wouldn't survive, like high radiation areas and things like that would just mess with the electronics. There's a reason why satellites are wrapped in gold foil. Is to protect from that radiation so the electronics don't fry. So it's the same kind of thing, but they just use a pneumatic circuit. Everything is controlled through that circuit, through the actuators. And while it is specialized material, not commercially available, and it's specialized 3D printing, it is a a path that we can see where you could literally print out these soft material type robots using, pneumatics and muscle fibers, soft muscle fibers and things like that, that can then perform whatever task you're doing and putting into those potentially dangerous situations. So I think it's a huge advancement in mass production, material science, and anytime you have better and better 3D printers, like Greg said yesterday, it all comes back to the replicators. That's what we're looking for. All right.
It's
All right.
it's what we're looking for.
All right. So I will take that and swerve to the new magnetic micro robot can roll through your intestines. It takes high resolution 3D scans to spot cancer at the earliest stages. Colon cancer is one of the most curable cancers if it's caught early. And if someone like me and has Crohn's disease, you're supposed to get these scans every freaking year. And so that a non-invasive, you still have to do the prep because the scan has to be able to see. But that is very exciting. And if it finds something, it can enable virtual biopsies, I guess. So it doesn't actually snip. But non-invasive scans that eliminate the nerve-wracking wait for lab results. Human trials are expected to kick off in 2026. So that's actually very exciting.
Yeah, I'm all for the small robots. I know that sounds crazy, but I'm all for it. I mean, if it can detect and get better into the preventative medicine and be safe, obviously, it's got to be safe. But
and 30% of the Daily AI show co-hosts have Crohn's disease because Aaron does too.
there's a fact I didn't think you were going to get today. Well, on that shocking discovery, as I used to say, like on that what they used to say on Top Gear, on that poor note, or oh god, the famous line. Anyway, we're gonna wrap up the show there. So whatever it is, I buffed it. I couldn't think of the word, but that's it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you learned something from the news. I know I always do. And make sure you come back the rest of the week to hang out with us for the remainder of the conversations that we got. Tomorrow we're talking about a McKinsey report. I know on Friday we're doing our 2-week recap, which is good because I still, it's one of those weeks. I think I have like 3 more things. I'm just going to keep the tabs open until Friday and hit those news stories then. So keep on coming back the rest of the week, and we'll enjoy the conversation with us. Until tomorrow, guys, have a good one. Bye.
Aloha.
I feel like you can hear on the show that my head's got a... And we're still alive? Are we still going?
No, we are not still going.
It says live and recording, 58,
Oh.
58, 59.
Hey, we're still going. They're about to tell us something. Here we go.
Still recording. Hey.